Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. Today, we're going to talk about unlocking workforce potential, and I'm joined by Tom Banton, Eightfold's Head of Solutions Engineering. Tom has deep experience in business transformation, solution architecture, and solutions engineering, and is out in the market talking to the industry every day. We're excited to learn from some of his insights. My name is Mihir Gandhi. I'm now the Vice President of Marketing at Eightfold. Prior to this role, I actually built and ran our professional services and customer success departments. So let's get right into it. I won't spend a lot of time talking about the impact of COVID or the new normal and all of those buzzwords. I think what we are taking away and what we're understanding is that, Tom, the traditional methods of our talent acquisition and talent management processes, they have some glaring limitations. And I'm curious, can you just tell us what you're hearing in the market?
Here, we're seeing a shift from focusing on outside talent, trying to fill specific positions, with focusing on inside talent, trying to upskill, reskill workers. And rather than looking for positions, we're now looking for skills and people with a combination of skills. Also, I think, we're bracing for a potential recovery here where we may need to hire again. Let's learn everything we can about the employees we have and give them the ability to promote and grow inside our companies before we just hire outside talent over them. Let's actually promote from within, and then if we need outside talent, let's bring in, to fill those positions from the people that we've promoted.
It's as you talk about that, I think one of the things that has struck me is how little we as employers actually know about our workforce. I think we know from our existing systems their title, their role, their department, their employee badge number maybe. But beyond that, there's a rich set of experiences that every employee brings to the table prior to their stint at your current company. And then there's a bunch of stuff that they've done at the company that don't actually get captured in a way that allow you to move quickly to some of the things you're talking about.
So here, how long have you been at Eightfold?
3 years.
Have you updated your resume since you've been here?
No.
And think of all of the skills you've learned in 3 years. Where is that information being stored right now?
Between my ears.
But how much of that have you even forgotten?
Yeah, I've probably forgotten more than I know.
So, what's interesting is, we were using AI to help candidates fill in the blanks, when they apply for a job. Hey, I think you might know this skill and frame that skill. Why can't we do that for employees? You've had customer success roles at Eightfold. You've had marketing roles. How much of those skills, are actually being recorded somewhere? So if you want to go to another role, can we apply what you've learned over the last 3 years into that new role? I mean, I think, one of the things we say all the time is it shouldn't be easier to find a job outside your company than inside your company. And that's what we're trying to do, by using AI to help drive internal mobility.
Tom, I did a webinar with Tata Communications, a couple of years ago, and the leader from Tata said something really interesting. He said, external recruiters have no problem poaching my talent and seeing the potential in my talent. Why can't I free and democratize my internal recruiters to go think the same way, and my own business line leaders to go and think the same way? There's no more fertile recruiting ground than our own trained staff. And, as we dug deeper into this, I think there was a recognition that there's fragmented talent systems, a series of point solutions and bolt-on technologies to solve specific problems. But these problems are usually business function problems like compliance or reporting process, outcomes. They're not necessarily in service of the employee or from the employee perspective. And how can I as an employee think about my own career development, not in what opportunities are available today, but what opportunities could be available in the future, and what skills should I be learning and how?
We're still seeing most recruiters are still incented to look for outside talent. Why wouldn't you be incented to find somebody inside for the job? Why wouldn't you look inwards before looking outside as well? And part of that is, again, because we don't know everything that our employees are doing.
So, you said something earlier that I want to touch on, which is we don't know enough about other people. I want to tell a quick story. I had a friend who just a couple of weeks ago reached out to me for some resume help. And he's been at his current company for 3 years. And he deeply wanted to get his resume down to 1 page. And he said, can you help me distill everything I did the last few years into 3 bullet points? And it's impossible, right? It's like, if you combined every resume of every person who ever had his role or a role similar to it, then you get a great composite view of what the skills and capabilities are within that role. But if you're just looking at 1 resume or 1 bullet point, it's impossible to encapsulate all of what that person has done or is, and even then that's historical looking. It's what they did in the past, and it's self-reported and it's self-assessed. And all of those things have problems, especially as they relate to bias or, the impact of self-assessment on gender. And none of that is prospective. None of that helps anyone understand what that person is capable of doing next. How are those skills actually translated in the future? And so as you're talking about talent strategy with talent executives, how are people actually making that shift or trying to make that leap?
Well, you think about, again, I've been doing this for a while, resumes over a decade ago, the first line used to be, what I want to do in my career is X. And over the last 10 years, you're right, everything is, this is what I've done, this is what I know. And there really is very little room for our candidates to say what they really want to do in their next career. It's all just getting matched. So, going back to your point about people don't identify everything they know, there's still a lot of people doing Boolean searches on keywords, and you're missing out on some of the best talent. So again, we need to use AI to round out people's profiles and not be so narrow-minded looking for specific positions or skills, but combinations and well-rounded people.
There's a couple threads there to pull on. And one of them is like they want new jobs, right? And I think it's people crave learning opportunities, and the barrier for entry for taking a whole new job is quite high, right? Whether it's switching to a new company or even within your own department, that is the crux of your 9 to 5, right? Call it a 9 to 5 if you will. But there's all these micro learning opportunities, and how do you break down jobs into projects into sort of an integrated experience that helps everyone navigate their own unique path. And sometimes taking an entirely new job, it's a leap of faith. But are there ways that you can stepwise function into learning a new skill and some of this micro learning capabilities? We've seen the rise of talent marketplaces, and sort of Josh has talked about that, and a lot of folks it's hot in the market today. But it feels like those are only salient if they're in service of a couple things. First, of course, the business, but then also the alignment of the business with the talent strategy with the employee's career aspirations. And that's a fine needle to thread. And there's no technology that does that yet, right? I mean, it's fundamentally what AI is designed to help solve for.
I'll go back to your use case. When you joined Eightfold, did you see yourself where you are today?
No, but retrospectively, I can build that story. Right, I can retrospectively say, and when I want to tell the story, and everyone says this when they're talking to candidates or applicants, tell the story. You can always do that retroactively, but everyone's career arc is unique, and so you're trying to thread that needle of something that's understandable, but then also unique to you.
Correct. So people need to see what opportunities are available. I mean, we use our own technology internally, and a lot of people get matched. Like, I had no idea I could be in customer service. I had no idea I'd be in marketing. I had no idea. It's good to work outside departments, either on a project level to learn new skills, meet new people, or it's good to actually see that there might be another role or path I can go down and not be able to change paths.
So let's actually. One of the powers of global data, as we were interrogating our data here at Eightfold, there was a really interesting insight that came out that struck me. One of the most successful paths into a product trainer role is actually a middle school math teacher. And as we double clicked on that and we really started to understand what that means, both a middle school math teacher and a product trainer, they've got to take large, complex ideas and concepts. They have to distill them down to a couple of key learning points. They've got to wrangle a group of 20, 30, 40, 50 people in a room who may or may not want to be there, who have short attention spans, that are probably multitasking. And they've got to convey those small, discrete points that their audience walks away with, right? And when you describe the job that way, it makes sense. Yes, that's a math teacher. Yes, that's a product trainer. But very few math teachers or middle school math teachers are going to say, hey, you know what, let me apply for a product trainer role. That's not a typical career path. And so right there, we see some bias or some self-limitation with respect to self-assessment. And on the other side, a recruiter who's recruiting for a product trainer role is more likely to go do a Boolean query for someone who's been a product trainer and done it before than they are to maybe go, knock on the door of their local middle school. And knocking on doors is maybe a bit, hopefully that happens again soon. But again, there's limitation and there's information asymmetry across both of those that fundamentally AI should be able to solve when you have a data set that's large enough and an engine that breaks down skills and capabilities both for individuals and for the jobs and the roles that you're trying to fill them with. And so, embedded in there are a couple things, where there's global data, there's skills and capabilities, but there's also diversity, right? And when we think about the capabilities of individuals and how self-limiting we are by and large, almost by nature, and certainly by a gender perspective.
At Eightfold, we're actually able to look at the match score, and you're able to say, show me all of my high-scoring, diverse talent. Did they make it through phone screen, in-person interview, and making sure they didn't drop off? Some companies also like the ability to actually mask the profile, so you're evaluating everybody just on criteria. We're also seeing a shift where, no, I want to be able to see my diverse talent and help pull them through the process. But being able to identify diverse talent up front, manage them through the process, and then report on them through that whole process is one of the key ways of hiring more diverse talent.
Well, we can go down a whole path of talking about SEC regulation and sort of what that's going to mean or could mean for the future. It's not the point of our talk today. And I think what you're describing with diversity there is, especially, compounding that is this increasingly global workforce and footprint and recruiting aperture, right? We have to think about talent on a global scale. And this is precisely a data problem, right? Having to rationalize all of what we just talked about, along with from gaps in profiles to, inference to bias. We have to fill in the gaps on all those. And then, we have to rationalize data that we don't have access to, right? Things that either people forget to tell us, or maybe they're self-limiting on. And this is exactly where artificial intelligence is specifically and uniquely talented to solve, right? To rationalize large data sets that are too large and complex for any human to rationalize, and then to deliver insights that we can actually use against it. And I would actually love to jump into the product a little bit and see how Eightfold is actually showing this. I'd now like to introduce Quinn Adler to help us visualize how a single AI platform delivers actionable insights. Why is now the right time for AI and talent? Quinn, over to you.
Absolutely, Mihir. And really, it comes down to understanding your talent network and your employees at a very granular level. So if I look at an example of our capability dashboard that we provide with Eightfold, I can type in any skill, any role from the 1.5 billion data points that we've learned from over the years, that global data set, to easily understand and articulate who in our organization can learn a certain skill. And of course, from a keyword matching perspective, we can articulate who has that skill in their profile. But that's fairly table stakes in our opinion. We also want to understand who can learn said skill, in this case, about 1,100 people, if given the chance, based on their adjacent skills, based on the skills that are somewhat related to SQL. Maybe it's Power BI or Tableau or pivot tables or advanced Excel. Over 1,100 people at your company in this example can learn SQL if given the chance. And this allows you to maximize the likelihood that you hire the right person for an individual role, not just by looking at keywords on a resume.
One of the things that strikes me about this, Quinn, given that the capability overview is a significantly larger number than the skill overview, is that this is actually filtering in potential talent not filtering people out for not having the right keyword in their profile.
That's exactly right. And we've run so many studies internally that show that certain groups of individuals are more or less verbose about their skill sets on public profiles than others. We don't want to penalize people who truly feel they need to be an absolute expert on something to put it on their profile. We can infer with artificial intelligence the skill sets that everybody has and allow you as the hiring team to focus on quality and potential, not necessarily how robust a resume actually is.
That's fantastic. Let's see what else we can see in the capability dashboard.
Absolutely. Some of the things we can call out here is the skill prevalence. Is a certain individual role or skill rising or decaying as time goes on? And also seniority distribution at the organization. Who at your company, from the top down, has this skill or the easily ability to learn said skill to allow me to focus on what type of individual, vice president, director, entry, mid-level, et cetera, should I be targeting for this individual skill set?
Quinn, this is a good way for us to get, from a business line or a leader perspective, an overview of my benchmark, right, from a global perspective. But what do I do with this? Is there can you help us understand how this is actionable?
Absolutely. So if we go even further down the screen, we can start to understand and articulate some related skills and related titles, right? Being able to understand the skills that are somewhat adjacent to a certain skill set allows me to go far beyond, as I said, that keyword matching piece before. We can also start to understand the skills that are rising with time versus the skills that are dying out as time goes on to allow us to focus on skills that are gaining prevalence in the marketplace versus skills that are a dying breed that might have been much more popular a decade ago.
It's funny you say that. I was a consultant in a former life, and at one point was okay with SQL. Back when I was in that world, machine learning and artificial intelligence were glimmers on the horizon, right? They were the hopes of the future. For us, artificial intelligence at that time was more Terminator and Matrix, which maybe gives away a little bit about how experienced I am. But I wasn't an engineer and I wasn't particularly technical. As a consultant, I did do some visualization. I was in operations. I was doing business development, but I certainly wasn't doing a lot of the technical work that we see here. And so it's interesting to see how skills and capabilities, especially when we think about related skills, help in the overall understanding of what a profile is capable of doing. Can you also help us understand what we mean by related titles and relevant companies?
Definitely. So we can start to understand, you might not think of all these titles on the screen when trying to think of someone who knows SQL, right? You might think of an engineer. You might think of somebody like a software developer. But as Mihir said, there's a lot of different roles and potentially management positions. We can see a couple of them here who just by the nature of what they have to do, they need to be able to do SQL at a moderate level. And so this allows you to understand, you might be looking in places you might not normally think about to find this talent. And we're getting farther away from specific roles that have certain skill sets. And now we're looking at each individual person as a unique person of this team. And that allows us to understand who to be reaching out to for any given project.
Thanks, Quinn. That's fantastic. You can go ahead and stop your share now. I think this has been a fantastic way for us to understand the intersection of the power of global data, true deep learning AI, and then actually how to make it actionable within a talent environment and in a real life environment. So that's critical, right? The ability to benchmark my workforce on a global scale and understanding those gaps, it's necessary for talent strategy. What's interesting is that it looks at talent in its totality, right? When you looked at the entire talent pool, and you can use this to determine if you should build, buy, or borrow. And as we all know, there's a renewed energy and focus on employee reskilling and upskilling. One of the challenges we highlighted is how employees are inundated with different systems, benefits systems, time tracking, LMS, project management. We could probably use the rest of our time on this webinar to list them all out. But the takeaway is that employees don't know how to stitch all these resources together that a company is actually providing them to help them reach their goals. There's no integrated or personalized experience yet. Quinn, what are you seeing on that front?
Yeah, I mean, they're given logins to an LMS that they oftentimes don't use unless it's for diversity training. They have an access to an internal job board. They're matched with a mentor, and they're told, go figure it out. But from the employee's perspective, do I get the recognition? What do I get out of it? What's in it for me? And oftentimes the learning curve to understand what is in for me out of those systems, it's not there. It's not visible to the employee, and they just don't do it.
Well, so I want to talk about that because the what's in it for me is so important, right? When someone can instantly see value that they're getting out of a new technology, or a new piece of hardware, like an iPhone or what have you. And along those lines, the way that we are learning about and that we're understanding development is really that learning is a bite-sized integrated experience. You don't take one course and become an expert in something, right? And there's the obvious 70-20-10 rule that I think hopefully most people know about, where individuals tend to learn 70% of their knowledge from experiential and on-the-job learning, 20% from developmental relationships like mentorships, and 10% from coursework and training classes. But all of those are necessary to sum to 100, right? Stitching them together is the hard part, and that is the pain for the employees. And that is something that I'm really proud to show that we have tackled with our talent management offering. So Quinn, can you show us how Eightfold has created an integrated self-service experience that delivers personalized development opportunities for every employee?
Definitely, me here. And you'll see that what's in it for me resonates through the entire talent management solution. So we're playing the role of Graham in this example, and he's an employee at your company. And a couple of things to call out on Graham's profile here. First, we're taking data from the HR system that you can see on the top of the screen here, but also understanding from his resume, what has he done over the past couple of years? Right? We can look at obviously the org structure, but really understanding the skills and the projects that he's gone through up to this point and the skills he's gained along the way from these opportunities are things that we're going to uncover with that artificial intelligence. We can also understand and bring in data from enterprise systems all over the company, whether it's project management systems, communications like Slack or Microsoft Teams, even CRM such as Salesforce, to understand, what's my state of the union as an employee, to easily articulate to my management or anyone who wants to see my profile, what have I done and what am I capable of doing?
So what I think I hear you saying, Quinn, is we're not asking Graham to fill this out on his own. This is actually it's actually filled out with data that already exists, supplemented and powered by data that we can help provide that may or may not be inferred, that Graham can just corroborate. And so now that he's done this and rounded out his profile instead of building it from scratch, what does he see after that?
Absolutely. So then all of that manifests itself in the homepage of the Career Hub, where Graham can see any number of opportunities that he can take to upskill and reskill himself to meet his own goals at his own pace. And we can see a couple of the things here on this screen, right? Some of the things he's favorited to come back to later, whether they're gig projects or a true job opening from an internal mobility perspective that he is a strong fit for. He can easily see how he can achieve his skill goals, whether it's a project, again, through the gig economy at the company itself, or a course to take through the LMS that's easily surfaced here, or what can he do to become a marketing manager, right? So skill goals, job goals, Eightfold surfaces these opportunities that allows him to hit the goals at his own pace.
Can you scroll back up to the mentors for a second? I thought that was interesting. And it's something that I wanted to highlight here. We talk about an integrated experience and oftentimes employees being left to their own devices to figure out and stitch together, their paths. And, that is not divorced from the conversation around how do I help people help me, right? Again, what's in it for me from an employee perspective. So now when Graham reaches out to Brad or Jason or Steve, he's able to ask them not how do I get to your job, but you know what, let me share my screen. Can you help me understand which courses I should take? Here's what I want to do. Now you're fundamentally grounding this relationship in content where Brad and Jason and Steve undoubtedly want to help Graham be successful. Graham is now helping them guide him in what he should be doing next. And I think that's incredibly powerful because it does a few things, right? In the context of what you just described of an integrated experience across courses, projects, mentors, and jobs, Brad is maybe able to carve out a part of a project, right, that he can then assign to Graham and have a working relationship with Graham that help Brad meet his goals, but also help him understand what Graham's working style is like, and also help Graham develop those skills, right? The byproducts of these engagements and interactions are innumerable, right? And if you scroll back up, one of the things that I thought was also interesting was sort of this sideways view on this, right? I want to achieve a skill goal. Okay, so what are all the opportunities for my skill goal? I'm not hunting through, an LMS, a project management system, and so on and so forth. It's actually all integrated here into a singular experience. And I think that is a really remarkable, experience for an employee to help them on their career path. Because as we talked about, no two career paths are the same, and they never will be. Now, Quinn, let's pause here for a second. I want to talk something here about jobs, and we'll go straight. We've got a sense of the business leader perspective. We've gotten a view of the integrated experience from a career hub perspective that an employee gets. On that last screen that you just showed, one of the things that you highlighted was the job. And for those of you who were paying attention, you saw a strong match logo in the bottom right of that job. But that helps us understand a bit more of a candidate perspective, right? Internal employees are also potential candidates for jobs, but external employees are also, right? I mean, when we think about jobs and candidate experience, we typically think about talent acquisition. So how do we use AI to unlock candidates? Can you show us how companies are using AI and then using Eightfold in their candidate experience?
Sure.
Why did it say strong match? Like, what does that mean?
Sure. When it comes to the Eightfold career experience, we want to shortcut the process it takes for a candidate to find the jobs that are correct for them. In the standard career experience for the candidate, there are so many different tabs to scroll through, jobs descriptions to read through and self-assess. What's the difference between a software engineer 1 versus 2? If I have 10 of the 12 skills required to do this job, is that enough? There are so many reasons to self-assess and take some doubt that maybe I'm not the right fit for this role, and then choose not to apply. So with the Eightfold experience, we shortcut that process in a minimal number of clicks, and we'll show you that right here today. We can see in this example, there's almost 600 open jobs here, and it's not a good experience for me as a candidate to search through all these jobs, read the job descriptions, and then, as I said, self-assess and honestly, doubt myself along the way. So all I need to do as a candidate here is drag and drop my resume onto the screen and agree to the privacy policy. Those 581 jobs before, the large majority are irrelevant. But Jessica now sees that she's a strong fit for a few positions. And on the right-hand side here, she can see information on why she's a strong match for this role. This is the secret sauce. This is the warm, positive, uplifting experience and reasoning for why this person should apply, as opposed to giving a bunch of reasons why maybe you're not the right fit for the position.
Not to poke too much fun at this job description, but I don't know a lot of people who've coded monthly UPS invoices with cost allocation information provided by programs. I say this half jokingly, but pouring through the word by word description in a job and then self-assessing whether or not I've done that, it leads to a lot of false positives and a lot of false negatives. And there's plenty of research out there, like the famous HBR study on self-assessment. And really what the design principle here is helping this candidate understand why they should apply for this job, right? Not why they should not. Again, back to the filter in, not filter out mechanism that drives so much of what we do from a talent perspective. So Quinn, can you also continue through and just sort of show how this gets personalized from a job description perspective for each individual candidate?
Absolutely. So remember that we are inferring the skill sets of the individuals. We're not only relying on the keywords that are in the resume. So Jessica might not have some of these skills on her resume, and that's okay. By understanding the job titles she's held and the companies that she's worked at, Eightfold can understand the skills that she has. And again, that's where we really remove the concept of false positives, false negatives, and focus purely on quality. But as we scroll down the screen further, there's even more hyper-personalization that comes into play, right? People you may work with. Everybody wants to work with somebody they know from a past life. And we can call that to light here. Other similar jobs to this one as well. And then lastly, even curated content, both videos and articles that are specific to this candidate and specific to this job to create as much of a hyper-personalized experience as humanly possible.
Quinn, I think this is so important because, the increasing expectation of consumers and, in this case, candidates is more personalization. And as we think about employer brands are largely limited by current job descriptions and current, career site capability. The ability to personalize at scale is fairly remarkable. And we've seen clients use this to some pretty incredible outcomes, not just in increasing the number of applicants they have. One of our clients has seen a 70% increase in total number of applicants, but also then using what you described earlier in the diversity dashboard, or I think you're going to describe in a little bit on the diversity dashboard, about the quality of applicants. And we've seen the quality of applicants dramatically increase because applicants are able to find their right fit rather than spraying and praying for jobs that they may or may not be the right fit for. So Quinn, thank you for walking us through that. That's a fantastic way for us to have an understanding of how we unlock candidate experience and help direct candidates to jobs that they could be the best fit for, while also showing off a bit of our employer brand. So now, Quinn, let's flip over to the recruiter perspective. And let's actually do that with a bit of a twist, not just a typical recruiter perspective. I actually want to understand the recruiter perspective as it relates to DE&I. How does AI power DE&I initiatives through a recruiter's lens?
Definitely. And I think that's such an important lens to walk through because, as we've talked about so many times already, there are so many ways to bias whether a candidate is good or a bad, regardless of, any type of attribute on the surface, right? And so we can see a couple of things on this screen that I want to call out from a DE&I lens specifically. We validate and infer the skill sets that are on this person's resume, right? If there are skills on their resume, compare them against thousands of others like them to then be able to put a stamp of approval and validate that they've got these certain skill sets. Or on the like, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Quinn, it's interesting, as you lay out these validated, likely missing and missing skills. This is a great interview guide, right? As you think about sharing this information with a hiring manager with an interview loop, let's not necessarily focus too much on the things that we know are validated, but let's spend the majority of our time getting to understand what this person may or may not know, and digging in on some of those things so it's less repetitive and frankly a better interview experience for both parties.
Absolutely. And it allows you to catch the highest quality candidates because these skills here, as an example, are nowhere to be found on this person's resume, CV, LinkedIn. If you go to LinkedIn and type in any of these skills, this person will not show up because those skills are not in her profile. But you can see at the top of the screen here, she's an incredible fit for this data engineer position. The concept of likely skills, inferring every candidate's skill set, allows you as the hiring team to focus on quality of candidate, not necessarily buzzwords in the resume.
So that's an incredible demonstration of the power of global data combined with deep learning AI. How do you debias this?
Yeah, there's so many different things on this page that can bias anyone in analyzing this person, whether they're a good or a bad fit for this position. Right. And so this is what we call someone's full profile. I'm now going to flip into this exact same person's anonymized profile to take those traits that are going to cause good or bad bias regardless, out of bounds. And now we're looking at this person's trajectory, their skills, their highlights, but we do not know what they are, their picture, their name, their university, even their graduation year. Those things have been taken out of place to allow us to analyze this person in a non-biased way.
Thanks for sharing. I actually want to share a quick story, if you don't mind stopping to share. I think that, first of all, I'm from San Antonio, so I may be biased towards that person because hook 'em. But, I was at a global offsite when we were just getting introduced to one of our new clients a couple of years ago. And I actually pulled a profile at random of someone that they had recently hired. It was a female engineering manager. And after the presentation, one of the recruiters chased me down and was like, "Are you kidding? We know exactly who that person is, even though you debiased their profile." And I asked him, how did you know that? He goes, "Because we paid an agency an exorbitant fee to hire her. What you just showed me is that she applied to our company 6 times. And on the 7th application, which was submitted through the agency, we hired her, but we didn't even know she was in our talent network and that she was a 4.5 star match." I think you're going to start some conversations here around what are we paying agencies for? What does our agency model look like? But I thought it was an interesting way to think about not just the recruiter experience, that they were paying an agency to hire someone that was already in their talent network, but also the candidate experience. The candidate had been applying time and again and again and again. As a female minority engineering manager, you would imagine that was something that would get flagged fairly quickly in a non-AI way, and it wasn't. It was an unbelievable way for us to think about, and for them to think about how much data they're sitting on, and how many great candidates are sitting in their existing talent network. So now when we think about that female engineering manager diversity, can you talk to us a little bit about how that gets up-leveled at an organization? How do we use AI, and how do our clients use AI to understand diversity at a more global scale across the organization?
Sure. Eightfold comes out of the box with a full slate of diversity analytics to allow you to understand at a very deep level how you're doing when it comes to gender, ethnicity, veteran status, disability, and source of application as well. And we can see here right away that we are utilizing artificial intelligence to infer these traits if they're not self-declared. The large majority of applicants choose not to self-identify as a certain diversity category because they don't want to be pigeonholed in a certain bucket. And so we totally understand that. But we want to give you a very deep slate of understanding your entire employee set and application pool as well. And so we can really easily articulate here some of these hiring trends with whatever date range you're interested in with this same period to see what that change might look like year over year.
Quinn, if you don't mind scrolling back up to the top, I think one of the things that's interesting here is not just our hires, but thinking about our hiring funnels themselves. Can you help us understand a bit more on the hiring funnel front?
Sure. This data here is all the individuals that you've actually hired, which is great, but it's a little bit reactionary. We can also drill into the application data to get a little bit more proactive with how we are doing from a bias perspective, right? So in this example, we're looking at gender. And of course, we're going to be mirroring all the stages that you have within your ATS as well, so we can compare apples to apples here. And in this example, we can filter by business unit. In this case, we filtered by department for all the accounting applications we've seen. We can also filter on quality of applicant. In this case, we've seen show all the individuals who are 3, 4, and 5-star matches for the accounting role they applied for. This level of granularity allows you to really understand where bias might be at any point of your organization, even getting as deep as individual positions, recruiters, and hiring managers as well.
We think about unconscious bias training and several of the sort of training programs that clients have invested deeply in, and being able to understand that those are not broad-based in many senses. There's a general level of up-leveling your workforce, but then there's also having targeted, specific, quantifiable initiatives that you can move forward on. I'm curious, if you removed accounting from this, what would it look like?
Sure. And we can really easily see it's going to update in real time here to say, now we're not looking at one individual department, but the entire company. See how drastic that change was and how these colors shifted.
Yeah, and again, we talk about how actionable some of these things can be. There's so much data, there's so many insights, so many reports that we think about, and now we're actually able to make some of these a bit more actionable. And so, Quinn, thank you for sharing this. I think it's been a fantastic way for us to understand in a lot more granularity what AI does for us in the talent lifecycle, how a single AI platform helps for the total talent evaluation, right? From talent acquisition to talent management, and back around again, and why there is an integrated experience that can empower employees and candidates to be the best selves inside our company. And DE&I, as you pointed out, this is not a singular initiative. It actually is something that needs to be baked into every part of every process. And being able to measure it, being able to put things in place that allow us to open the aperture and filter in is remarkable. And I think that will be the next vanguard of diversity. So Quinn, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mayor.
So thanks to each of you for attending our session today. Hopefully you have a better sense of how AI is already playing a key role in helping leaders deliver holistic, personalized experiences that help candidates and employees develop their skills while also delivering value to their organizations. how Eightfold's Talent Intelligence Suite delivers the power of purpose-built AI and self-learning AI that enables employees and candidates to discover opportunities that help them achieve their career aspirations, and that also help business leaders manage their key strategic priorities from DE&I initiatives to business outcomes. For more information, please visit our website at eightfold.ai. I hope you have a fantastic rest of HR Tech. I'm glad to be here.